The expert, the architect, the scientist, the heartbeat, the metronome, the brain. Endless adjectives, analogies, and appellations have been summoned by fellow professionals in sincere yet scant attempts to describe exactly what Xavi Hernandez was in his prime, the ways in which he kept the beautiful game beautiful, and what unique qualities he spent the best part of 2 decades bestowing upon the few teams fortunate enough to have held tentatively with him their privileged ranks. Fitting though for many of those comparisons may seem, it is with an almost comical inevitability that they fall short to their subject. That is because in so few cases have words ever done justice to the man. Xavi's unparalleled brilliance existed beyond the words and the numbers, out of reach of post-game reports and superficial statistics. His genius was found among the nuances between the lines, at the very point where mind meets the body and thought becomes action, where the three-stop journey of vision to execution is made at such speed and with such accuracy that it becomes almost intimidating. Xavi was, to all who watched him play, the making of a yard of space, with the deftest of shoulder drops, the advancing with the ball more effortlessly than without it, and knowing exactly when to offload and move again, the covering of the pass you didn't see, the pass that nobody else saw, and having more than enough by the way of technique to make it spellbinding illusions in the eyes of the open-mouthed masses, simple parlor tricks to the greatest playmaker the game has ever seen. It's an odd, almost blasphemous feeling imagining Barcelona without Xavi and vice versa, yet it not for the remarkable level of persistence for a young boy and one unforgettable trial, the player and the club in question, so deeply entwined though they may be each other of our minds, could well have plotted diverging paths. Not many players can boast of being physical embodiments of a football style, but Xavi Hernandez is certainly one of them, but on the same time, heir to the players such as Josep Samitier and Pep Guardiola. With his tremendous vision, superb technical skills, and a perfect passing game, Xavi was the ideal match for the passing-focused Tiki-Taka. He is one of the most decorated Spanish players of all time, having won 8 La Liga titles, 4 UEFA Champions Leagues, 2 European Championships, and 1 World Cup. He wasn't the most agile dribbler, nor he was physically strong. He didn't have the best of shots in football, nor he the best defender of his team. He didn't stand out on the field or off it, but still, Xavi Hernandez is without doubt one of the best players in football history. In a dominant Barcelona, known for possession of the ball, in inexhaustible combinations, Xavi emerged as the metronome in the midfield. For every unbridled run by an opponent, the small midfielder was limited to responding with a light touch of the ball or a simple and precise clearance. He saw the field like no one else, placing each ball at the teammate's foot with the same precision with which he placed Tiki-Taka, defining an era of football. Xavi first appeared as a small but significant blip on the Barcelona radar aged just 6. Seen playing by the club's director of youth football, Oriol Tot, Xavi was said to have charmed the distinguished observer with the closeness of his ball control and dexterity of his passing, but left him less than convinced by his physique and stature or lack thereof. Exactly what Tot was looking for, stature-wise, in a 6-year-old remains a mystery, but by the time Xavi reached the age of 11, he had been convinced to give the boy a trial. During the said trial, Xavi scored a hat-trick, perhaps the only hat-trick he would ever score, and his reward was his first Barcelona contract. Only after the so-called trial did Xavi's father admit that the contract had already been signed. Subsequently, like most Barcelona legends, Xavi is a product of La Masia, the Blaugrana's training school. He stood out and proved fit the philosophy implemented by the club great Johan Cruyff. Xavi's Sweet 16 was toasted by the progression to the Barcelona B team, where under the command of Josep Maria Gonçalves, he achieved promotion to the Spanish second division, for whom he turned out in a promising fashion with a little over a year before earning promotion to Louis van Gaal's senior squad in the 1998-1999 season to rub shoulders with the likes of Patrick Kluivert, Jari Litmanen and Rivaldo, in addition to future managers Pep Guardiola and Luis Enrique, and had an immediate impact. Even so, Xavi's legendary story in Barcelona could have ended before it really began if there hadn't been someone in the Hernandez family who was even cooler. After Xavi's 14 games in the first team, Guardiola, who had been injured and left a temporary slot for Xavi to fill, returned from injury, which led to Louis van Gaal to return Xavi to Barcelona's B team, where he would continue to develop. Those paying close attention were, of course, AC Milan, who offered the 19-year-old prospect a lucrative contract and guaranteed minutes on the field of play. The Milanese proposal pleased his father and brothers, but Maria Merce, Xavi's mother, did not want to see her son in another club, and she even threatened to divorce if her son left Barcelona. The final word came from Xavi, who decided to stay. His phrase remained forever: "I know someone who is cooler than me, my mother, of course." The Barcelona faithful were first given a glimpse of their future star, all wide-open eyes and enthusiastically coiffed fringe, in a Copa Catalunya fixture on the 5th of May 1998, away to Unió Esportiva Lleida. Here began a 17-year journey with Barcelona's first team, a club which he won all possible competitions. Far from representing the first step along the road to a golden era spent in the riches of his boyhood club, laden with the type of success he would have dreamed as a boy, the type we all have come to associate Xavi and the celebrated collaborators in recent years. Following his side's La Liga triumph of 1999 came 5 unthinkably barren seasons. His club's fortunes worsened further when in 2001 the masterful Pep Guardiola vacated the Catalan midfield, swapping Barcelona for Brescia, and the not-so-simple task of replacing him naturally fell on Xavi. Sadly, to a team of decreasing quality and wavering philosophies, Guardiola's absence did not go unnoticed. The fresh-faced Spaniard shouldered much of the blame from the discontented fans, so much that even notching his first El Clasico goal in March 2002 wasn't enough to stop Xavi from being christened Parabris As, meaning windscreen wiper, by his own fans, the less than flattering nickname imbued upon him on account of his persistent sideways passing. It appeared as though a staring row at the center of Barcelona's midfield may have well been beyond Xavi's juvenile talents, and a move out of the Catalonian pressure cooker eastbound for Italy was said to have progressed beyond the preliminary stages. The growth in the main team was calm and sustained. Between 2001 and 2003, he began to gain preponderance in the first team, and despite playing a more defensive role, assists and goals were coming from the feet of the young midfielder. In the 2004-2005 season, he was already the vice-captain of the team and was named La Liga's Spanish Footballer of the Year, a year before his first major achievement in 2006, which of course was the UEFA Champions League, with Xavi left on the bench in the final after a final period in which he was affected by injuries. Joan Laporta became club president and installed Frank Rijkaard as the club's manager. The Dutchman quickly recast his squad and reimagined their application in a more liberated 4-4-3 formation, and over the course of the 2 subsequent seasons, the club replotted their future in a fashion few would have dared to predict. In their first season under Rijkaard, Barcelona finished in second place, bested only by Rafa Benitez's Valencia. In their second season, after an excruciating 6-year wait, Barcelona were champions of Spain once more, helped immeasurably by new faces and new ideas on and off the pitch, as the introduction of Laporta and Rijkaard was swiftly followed by the acquisitions of the vastly influential Ronaldinho, Deco and Samuel Eto'o. There was one more familiar face in particular whose expression had been altered most noticeably. No longer wearing a grimace that his team's prior performance deserved, no longer the windscreen wiper, Xavi's beaming grin told of his delight and pride all at once. He had proved invaluable during their latest domestic triumph. This was, there is no doubt, only the beginning. In 2005, Xavi was named the club's vice-captain, a fair reward for his still burgeoning influence and apt representation of the club's deep-rooted identity, and if his team's winning of the previous season's league hadn't quite heralded in a new era for Barcelona, then his being named as an integral part of their ambitious hierarchy certainly would. After all, Xavi would outlast Laporte and Rijkaard, and still, success would come his way. Barcelona began the 2005-2006 season with victory in the Supercopa de España, a 4-2 aggregate win over Real Betis, sufficient to see them begin the new campaign with silverware in their hands. Fortunately for Xavi, the weight of the Supercopa did nothing to slow his team down. Instead, it simply afforded them another test of success, one they were irreplaceably keen to savor again. Barcelona proved insurmountable in La Liga once more, Rijkaard's men retaining their title with a points gap between themselves and their closest rivals Real Madrid, 3 times the size of the previous season. Try as they might, Real Madrid's latest crop of Galacticos could perform only a poor imitation of their cross-country rivals. More telling in the story of Barcelona's grand revival, though, was their European conquest from the same season. Defeating Arsenal 2-1 in a grandstand Champions League final in Paris, Barcelona secured their first European title for 14 years. The press were duly briefed. Barcelona were back in a big way. But the following 2 seasons defied expectations, though the ink was still damp in the paper stories telling Barcelona's return to the big time. Still tipsy were Barcelona's players from the impressive double and had formed the latter half of their back-to-back league titles. As a result, Xavi and company were overtaken by Real Madrid. Bar one additional Supercopa title won at the center against local adversaries Espanyol, Barcelona were denied major silverware for another 2 years, both league titles being collected by Real Madrid, the Copa del Rey finding homes in their trophy cabinets of Sevilla and Valencia, and the 2 years of European titles making stops in Milan and Manchester respectively. Barca's untimely reversion to mediocrity sat uncomfortably with Laporte, who was far from willing to trade away his club's newfound dominance, and as many had predicted, Rijkaard was given the axe. In his place, a host of high-profile managers were widely touted for the position, but Pep Guardiola, with only the experience of a year managing Barcelona's B team, was named manager. Divisive though the bold decision to hire Guardiola was, it would undoubtedly prove to be an inspired one. However, in the early days, what his appointment meant for the stalwarts of Barcelona's squad was unclear, particularly Ronaldinho, Deco and Eto'o. 3 of the most influential players during Rijkaard's era were swiftly offloaded by Guardiola. Xavi's career began to take on interesting contours as the midfielder became a key player for Barcelona. But it was only at the age of 27 that he stopped being a great player and became one of the best players in history. With former teammate Pep Guardiola at the helm, Barcelona became unstoppable. Until the end of the season, Xavi won everything at the club and national team level. And although he was never credited as the main worker, Xavi will always be one of the most fundamental factors in the functioning of the legendary Tiki-Taka and all the teams that he represented. Unsure of his role in the team, Xavi sought out his new manager to discuss his plans for the upcoming season. Cautiously, he asked the man who 7 years before he had initially failed to emulate at the club, "Do you count on me this season?" Guardiola's response was emphatic, "I can't imagine this team without you in it." And so the stage was set for Xavi to conduct the club's second era-defining revival in 4 years. But first, he would travel with his countrymen to contest the Euro 2008. As a boy, willingly handing himself over to the sport he would fall only deeper in love with. As his obsession grew, it was no fellow Spaniard that would catch the young Xavi's eye and lead him further beyond the white line into the all-consuming world of football. Instead, the honor would fall to Matt Letizia, Paul Gascoigne and John Barnes, a seemingly unlikely British trio to whom Xavi couldn't help becoming ever increasingly enamored by as they headlined the English football reruns that found their way into Xavi's household by way of their modest television set in the early 1990s Catalonia. Xavi did not actively model his game after those he adored watching as a child, nor would he achieve fame from scrolling his name across scoresheets in quite the same way his idols did. But Xavi, even with his rather less buccaneering approach, would certainly come to dictate the tempo of games and will their outcomes to his want and will in much the same way. This was never more evident than during the period of success in which Xavi proved instrumental for both club and country, sparked his memorable performances at Euro 2008. Internationally, Xavi was the captain of the Spanish under-20 team that won the FIFA World Youth Championship in 1999, shortly after helping Spain to a silver medal at the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney. He was promoted to the Spanish senior team. Xavi played sparingly at the 2002 World Cup and did not get off the bench at the 2004 European Championship. He was a regular in the Spanish lineup by the time they played in the 2006 World Cup, but he had his first notable international success at Euro 2008. Spain had long since struggled with their own issues of enforced mediocrity and delusions of grandeur, often haunted by their floundering fortunes. On many occasions, Spain had traveled to major tournaments with squads considered more than capable of securing the grand prize, but since their European triumph in 1964, they had failed to do so. Nevertheless, under the expert tutelage of the late Luis Aragonés, Spain entered the co-hosted tournament with the aim of departing with its great trophy in tow. Aragonés remained adamant to do this he would require Xavi as a team's orchestrator, a plan he saw fit to inform the playmaker in the early hours of the morning, knocking on his hotel door and telling him, "I want you to touch the ball more than anyone else." Aragonés' men began the tournament in style, dispatching Russia, Sweden and Greece in the group stage before circumventing a near-disastrous quarter-final exit on penalties versus old foes, Italy. Russia waited once more in the semi-finals and, much like their first meeting in the tournament, were defeated comfortably. All that stood between Spain and an international acclaim 40 years in the making was Joachim Löw's Germany. The final was predictably tense, played atop a field practically undulating with knaves, and in the end, it was decided by just a single goal, one crafted rather fittingly by Xavi. Having received a pass from Marcos Senna, Xavi's neat first touch was taken on the turn and opening his body and his field of vision to the acres ahead him, in which Fernando Torres instinctively darted. Played with a deft weight and expert timing, Xavi's through ball dissected the German defense, sending Torres towards goal, and the forward dinged the ball over the stranded Jens Lehmann to give Spain the lead, and after an hour's determined defense, the European title itself. Lifting the famous European Championship trophy aloft before a 50,000 strong crowd in Vienna, never before had it been so apparent just how far Xavi had come. Far gone were the days of being called the windscreen wipe by those unconvinced by his ability. So far, in fact, it was time for a new moniker, Maki, short for Machina, meaning machine, the nickname of choice from his adoring compatriots, fitting for Xavi's rebirth. Over the 8 years that followed, at both domestic and international level, Xavi would come to know the euphoria that only achieving your very potential professional ambition can bring, with a unique intimacy, as his team's success would prove truly unprecedented. Upon returning to Barcelona, his Euro 2008 winners' medal draped proudly around his neck, Xavi picked up straight where he had left off, a mainstay at the heart of his team and on course for history. With Guardiola at the helm, Barcelona hit stormy waters soon after leaving port with an opening day loss to Numancia, followed by a disappointing draw at home to Racing Santander. But with mistakes out of their system early, Barcelona went on to win 19 of their next 20 league games, opening a vast chasm between themselves and their rivals at the summit of the league. The team's incredible form was far from restricted to only their league campaign. In their quest to secure both the Copa del Rey and the Champions League crowns, Barcelona marched unabated by their every challenger, and by the final weeks of the season, they found themselves in an insuperable lead in La Liga, with further 2 finals on the horizon. Even with their foot off the pedal in the closing stages, Barcelona won the title with a 9-point lead. On 13 May 2009, in the Copa del Rey final, despite falling to an early goal, Barcelona defeated Athletic Club 4-1, with Xavi gracing the occasion with his side's 4th and final goal. 2 weeks later, in the Champions League final, Xavi orchestrated a man-of-the-match performance as he helped his side to yet another European title, defeating Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United 2-0 on the night. The very next season, the 2009-10 campaign, Barcelona won the La Liga, having already added the Supercopa de España, UEFA Super Cup and the Club World Cup to their trophy cabinet to complete a unique sextuple of trophies for the calendar year. On an almost weekly basis, Xavi and his teammates were rewriting history with addendums few considered possible. Come the record-breaking season end, Xavi was called to action for his country for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. Had he been hesitant in the slightest to represent his nation, it is likely Spain boss Vicente Del Bosque would have insisted upon conscription. Such was Xavi's importance to the team. Xavi, though, couldn't have been more eager to continue his form with his compatriots. The favorites of the pundits and fans alike, the reigning European champions Spain, were heavily fancied for the tournament. However, they were shocked in the opening fixture by Switzerland and succumbed to a shock 1-0 defeat. The night of their opening day defeat, Xavi found it impossible to sleep, his mind refusing to settle and instead only projecting the 4-second fixture on loop against his closed eyelids. So Xavi got out of bed and turned on the television and watched it back for real. In the morning, he went to Del Bosque's room, first thing, where he found the boss tired from having spent the night doing the very same thing. Del Bosque was adamant that they shouldn't change a thing and Xavi agreed, calling it pure chance they lost to Switzerland. We carried on the same road knowing we would be criticized, but every game became a trial. If Xavi had learned one thing at that juncture of his career, it was how to win a final. Staying true to their intricate possession-based Tiki-Taka style of play, a methodology the pass and move adoring Xavi naturally thrived under and helped to broadcast internationally to a great success with club and country, Spain turned their early disappointment into their greatest inspiration. They failed Honduras, then Chile to qualify from their group, then defeated Portugal, Paraguay and Germany, each time 1-0 en route to the final. In an almost brutal final in Johannesburg, Spain faced the Netherlands, and though they had to call upon extra time to break down the orange wall, 1-0 was again enough. 2 years from their European dream, Spain had gone a step further, the final step of them all becoming world champions for the first time in their history. But for a 25 minutes rest against Honduras, which came with the game already won, Xavi was there at the nucleus of it all for every second of his country's memorable tournament, cavorting around center stage like a one-man band, fulfilling 1,000 duties at once, pulling the puppeteer strings, waving the conductor's baton, laying down the architect's lines. By the time Xavi returned to domestic duties with Barcelona, Laporta had been replaced as Barcelona's president by Sandro Rosell, and this was to be the first of many changes in the Barcelona hierarchy over the coming years, as Rosell himself would be succeeded by Josep Maria Bartomeu in 2014. On the managerial front, the fondly remembered Tito Villanova and Tata Martino would come and go. Yet still on the field of play where he was at most ease, Xavi could be found on the stripes of his beloved Barcelona, his trophy haul rapidly growing at a rate only bettered by the still growing reputation that would eventually precede him when his heady Barcelona days had finally come to close. And come to a close they would. In fact, Xavi had practically signed a deal to move away, believing that it would be the right time to move on from Spain, having helped his nation to retain the European Championship title in 2012 with another 2 assists in the final against Italy before retiring from the national team after the 2014 World Cup, but was convinced to stay by the incoming Luis Enrique. Xavi stay one more season, Enrique was said to have told him, "We are going to win everything. I know it." Between the final day of Guardiola's 14 trophy reign and the very first of Enrique's own celebrated era, Xavi and his teammates would claim just 2 more trophies. In the 2014-15 season, Luis Enrique's first as Barcelona manager, few so much threatened to stop Barcelona from completing a clean sweep of competitions, and none managed it. In truth, Xavi's influence throughout the season was relatively minimal, particularly when compared to many of his previous seasons' contributions, though few needed to be at their best as long as they could look at the club's three South American musketeers, Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, and Neymar, for inspiration, as the trio conspired to score a truly outlandish 122 goals between them during the season. But with the long-term captain and fellow club legend House Puyol retiring from the game in May 2015, Xavi was named the club's principal leader, and his team's achievements for the season did sufficient justice to the honor. In the space of 13 days leading into the summer of 2015, dreams wilder than those even Xavi could have left himself to imagine were pieced together. Win by a landmark win, and his Barcelona farewell was made to be every bit as exquisite as the career it had been a privilege of the following. For the second time in his storybook career, Xavi was a treble winner, and this time the trophies were his to lift. Having played a part in constructing potentially the finest eras in the histories of both Barcelona and Spain, it goes without saying Xavi was blessed to have belonged to such supreme squads. But in his own words, the one who has the ball is the master of the game. Never did the ball look so quite graceful to be in one master's feet than when in his possession. Xavi's incredible career provides startling evidence of the stunning riches awaiting those who approach their game in the right manner, who match their ability with the effort to make their dreams a reality, and who stand to those who doubt them. Sadly, to the mere mortals watching on, clutching to the fading hope that perhaps they, or the way somebody they know, could perhaps emulate the Spaniard, Xavi's career also illustrates the incredible exploits available only to a player truly born to play, and just what is capable when nature and nurture combine to such stunning effect. Like a lighthouse, always turning away and searching, a young Xavi once aimed a spotlight on the necessity of patience, humility, and confidence to make it through the more rigorous requirements of the beautiful game. At its highest level in his prime, Xavi shone brighter than every contemporary on so many occasions, illuminating the paths through choppy defender-infested waters towards goal, game after game. Xavi was undisputed in two of the most dominant teams in the history of the game: the club he represented for 14 years and the national team for which he played 133 times. His genius was discreet, and he rarely reaped the laurels of collective success, but history remains in Euro 2008, in which he was the main figure in an achievement that marked the end of Spain's 44 wait for an international trophy and began La Liga's new dominant era with Barcelona, in total where he played 767 games. He went on to play 4 more seasons at Qatari club Al Sadd, helping the team win the Qatar Stars League in 2019. He retired from professional football at the end of that season, but decided to stay in Qatar to pursue a coaching career. That summer, he signed his first managerial contract and took over as the coach of Al Sadd. Xavi is the herald of Tiki-Taka, in many ways a far more important player in his club than Messi. Wherever Messi is the savior, the little genius who could pull magic out of thin air, Xavi is emblematic of a philosophy. He was the walking embodiment of Guardiola's football vision, a player that oozed control. Whenever he was on the pitch, the game ran through him. A World Cup winner, he finished his career with 133 caps for Spain and 767 appearances for Barcelona. He won the La Liga title 8 times and a magnificent 4 Champions League crowns. One of the most important Spanish footballers of all time, his contribution to Barcelona is unrivaled. The final word on Xavi must go to the eloquent Thiago Alcantara, who once said, "Xavi is eternal. Even when he is not in his very best level physically, he plays a kind of football that gives oxygen to the team." It makes me sad to think that I won't be able to watch Xavi for one more time. He always have that level. He is football. He is one of those players that made Barcelona what it is today. The future will tell whether the sin of never giving Xavi the throne as the best player in the world will be forgiven or not. But until then, there is no doubt about what a star Xavi was, a true predestined football player. 6 times in the FIFA Team of the Year and 3 times in the World Player of the Year podium, Xavi was a giant in world football.